Welcome to Parenting Different, a place where real adoption stories come to life. My name is Anna Bernacki, and this is the Parenting Different podcast. Welcome to the Parenting Different podcast. My name is Anna Bernacki, and I am here with a guest today. I'm super excited to talk to Jodi. She is absolutely incredible mom, adoptive mom. She did international adoption, and I'm really excited to hear more details. I've heard your story before, but I'm excited to kind of dive into more of those details of your journey overseas and bringing home your baby. And so just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are today, and then we'll kind of go back in time and talk about your adoption story.
Okay, well, my name is Jodi Slein. I'm currently a parent coach, working with families to achieve a secure attachment. I also was a teacher for a long time, so I have a master's in education. So when I was first married back in the 1990s is when we saw the special on 2020, the show about Romania, and it just had gone through a revolution. And after the revolution, they found all these children abandoned in orphanages, and it was horrific. The conditions, the way the children were living, just hundreds of thousands of children hidden away in these orphanages. And so they went in and did a three-part series on it, and we watched it. And we were young, in our early 20s, had no money, or anything, and said one day we're going to adopt from Romania. It just moved us so much, and our heart was there, thinking these children, there's so many children, and they need a family. And so that's where my story began.
Okay. So you see this special, your heart is
Mhm.
moved. Then what? Like, how does that process start where you go from an idea to actually making it happen?
Right. And adoption, there weren't a lot of adoptions at that time. So, and it wasn't possible at that time. We had no means to do it at that time. So we both went back to school, got master's degrees while working. And I was visiting my mom in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin. And I lived in Illinois at the time, Chicago area. And there was a special about this woman from Romania who's opened an adoption agency. And they followed her and some families over, and they did a mini series on the local news in Milwaukee. So I watched it and I got the information, and I wrote it all down, and I thought this is our path. This is how it's going to happen. We were married at that time 8 years, and no children yet because we were waiting to have children because of school and everything. And
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, and still young. I was just maybe 30 then, maybe 31. And so it was time, definitely time to start a family. And so I got her information. And then she had a seminar actually in Illinois about her adoption agency and what they were doing with, children from Romania. Sean and I went to that. And then that's when we started the process.
Wow.
We, yeah,
I guess I never knew that part of your story where
yeah,
I didn't realize
yeah,
it started like local news, and then that's absolutely crazy.
yeah.
So
It was crazy.
most couples would say, we're going to have biological children first, someday we'll adopt. Your choice in adopting first is so unique and interesting, and I find that very fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
I
how
guess
did that come about?
Well, we were so moved, after I saw that story on Romania, and it stayed with me. I mean, I really felt the need and the desire to do it. I mean, it was so strong that I wanted to do that first. And I thought, this is our time. This is a sign, this is a sign it's time to do this.
Yeah.
And I was so moved because what are the chances that I just went to visit my mom and that was on? You know what I mean about Romanian orphans? I mean, it was such a coincidence. It was just a sign. And there were other signs too that I'll talk about later when we got the referral. But that moved me, and I talked to my husband about it when I got home, and I said, let's go to this seminar, let's get the information and let's see. And we went, and it was really good. She had a doctor that was from Romania who lived in Romania who would go and examine the children, give us a whole health report and things like that. So she really had a good process in place.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And the orphanage she worked with. So it just was time, and my husband felt it too, and he was fine with that because we hadn't tried to have children, did the opposite, I mean,
Right.
you know, was not even trying yet, but that was, yeah, that was the time, and I just wanted to do it so badly, and then we had met some families that had gotten children from Romania, and that even just made it even more powerful. Like, oh, these kids, they need us,
Right.
and I just felt my child was there.
And he was.
Yeah, yeah,
So how
yeah.
long how long was that process from you go to the seminar, you start the
Hmm.
paperwork. How did that process go then? Like, what were the steps of the
Well, yeah.
process? Did you have to do training? All of like, what did that look like for you?
So the process started. So since we lived in Illinois and her agency was in Wisconsin, we had to find somebody in Illinois to do our home study. So we had to go through a social worker there. So to start the process, the first thing we had to do was petition for a foreign orphan. So we had to go through the immigration office. We had to go in and be fingerprinted and file a petition to adopt a foreign orphan. And so we did that, got fingerprinted. That's what started it. And then we had to find someone to do a home study for us in Illinois. And so we did that. So we started that process. In the meantime, we filled out all the paperwork to adopt, in Romania. And so
Mhm.
our file started. It took 9 months from start to till we traveled. And that was quick. Usually it takes like a
I was gonna
year, but
say
I was
that
so on top of everything. I was so
that's
organized.
fast.
And like I was like, hey, next step, next step, next step. So I was really on top of it. And so we did the home study. She had to come and do a visit. I remember too at the time, we had two dogs, miniature schnauzers. We're on our third set now, and we had them since we were first married. And so our one, he was very loyal to us, but he didn't like strangers. And so he would be a little bit naughty. I
Oh,
remember going thinking,
no.
oh no, they're going to make us get rid of our dog. I remember going to the vet and saying, can you please just give us something and giving him like Valium to calm him down. So it wouldn't be an issue. It was crazy. Like all those things, you're having a home study, they're coming to your home, you're
Right.
doing all this. It's like
Yeah.
all these things go through your head like, oh no, they're not going to, like this or that. So, but actually he was really good and he was fine.
So then how did the matching process go? Because
Well,
obviously,
that's
yeah, tell us about that whole experience and
well, so you
how
get your file together, and your dossiers together with your home study, the background checks with all this blood work that you have to have done, as a foreign adoption, your fingerprints, everything. So you have this file this big, it's big. And so you have to then send it to the Romanian consulate, and then you have to have them include the, FedEx envelope to then forward it to the American embassy, the immigration office. And so you have your whole file, and then they send it back to you, and you bring it, and then you give it to the adoption agency, and you're ready for a referral. So I had my file, and I drove. Well, I was in Illinois, like north of Chicago. So Milwaukee was, like an hour away. And then the agency was in Sheboygan. So it was a couple hours away. So I said, I have my file. I'm going to send it. My sister said, and my mom said, why don't we just drive it to her? We'll go with you. And I remember Sean was traveling for work. And I was a teacher, so I had the summer off. And this was in June. And so, end of June. So I took the file, we took it in, and Morello, who was in charge of the adoption agency, said, well, and we originally asked for a girl because every
okay.
mom runs a girl, right? And so she said, well, more people are asking for girls, so it will take longer. But she said, I just had two little boys referred to us that are available for adoption. And Michael, well, Mihai was his name, which is Michael in English. And his birth date was our address, 1013. We lived at 1013 Potomac Court in Grays Lake. And so I was like, okay, that's it. That's another sign. That's it. That's our child. So they had a video of him and a couple pictures, his file, his report from the doctor. And so I looked at it and I just knew. I just knew. I
Yeah.
said, okay, we don't need to wait for a girl. This is supposed to be our son. And so I took the pictures and they had a video for us and I took it home and I remember calling my husband on the way home when we got home and said, well, we have a boy. And he said, what? What? I said,
You're like,
Oh,
he's
I
like,
saw.
wait a minute, that's not what we were doing.
Yeah, they have boys available. Mihai, and he's he was at that time, I guess, 16 months. He turned 2 in October, so he was probably like a, so like yeah, it was about 18 months maybe. He was 18 months old. And so he wasn't quite walking stably because he was in a crib most of the
Yeah,
time. Even in the video when they gave him like toys or things to grasp, they gave him like a marker. They didn't even have toys. The doctor did bring in some blocks, and his fine motor and things to stack them. It was just interesting watching the video. But he was so interested in that marker. I just rewatched it the other day and he was just like looking fascinated because he never really had anything like that.
yeah,
And so we watched that, and my husband came home and we saw the pictures, but then it was a waiting period. So then we had to wait 3 months before we could travel. So we didn't travel until September, like September, the end of September. Um, Anything could have happened during that time. It was scary because if there could have been a hepatitis breakout at the orphanage, or there could have been something, or a birth parent or birth family member, my cat's about to jump, could have could have come in and visited, and then it would be another 6 month waiting period. So we weren't sure what could happen. So it was
yeah.
hard to wait. But in that time, we had to file a power of attorney and have all that notarized, get all that taken care of because they had the court case before we traveled. So everything was done. So we did the power of attorney. We filled out all the paperwork to adopt him, reported to immigration that this is the child and all of those things. And then they did the court case before we went and then gave us a travel date. So they got the court case. And they
Oh,
also had to
okay.
publish in the paper that this child is
Oh,
being adopted in case a relative did want to come forward. So we did all that. And then it was all done. And then we went and traveled September. We got him on the 20th. So we traveled on like the 18th and we spent the weekend in Romania. They took us to see sites and all these things, and but we couldn't get him until Monday, and so we went in on Monday and went to the orphanage, and we had to wait there like over 3 hours. They brought him down, and he just walked down. He was walking, and I was amazed he was walking because he really wasn't in the video. And so
yeah,
at that time it was a month before his birthday, so he was 20, almost 2. So it was just like 2 weeks before his birthday. And so he walked down and he just looked at us and he didn't know what to think. It was unreal, really, thinking about that. I just rewatched that video too recently, and he was just, kind of taken back and thinking, what's going on here? Didn't understand the language, didn't understand, but they were
right,
speaking to him in Romanian. Saying this is your mommy, daddy. He had no idea what a mommy or daddy was because he never
right.
had
Yeah,
one.
no
Because he
concept.
was abandoned at birth at the hospital. He was left at the hospital. So he never had any interaction with his birth mother or father. And so, uh, we had to wait there like a couple hours, which was crazy because I just wanted to get out of there. It was a very like sterile place, very sterile. Like they had pictures painted on the wall of Humpty Dumpty and like some, characters, but no toys, nothing. And the children were all upstairs. And there were about, even walking in, the gate was rusty. There was the playground outside. There was like a swing set, but it was rusted and yucky. And it just wasn't like you wouldn't want to take your kids out there. There's just nowhere really
Right.
for them to go. And so we just had to wait there because they had to go and do some paperwork with his birth certificate. They had to change, legally that once we got there and got him, that's when the adoption became final because the power of attorney and the court case. But we had to take once we took him and once we were there, then it was finalized. So they had to go finalize some paperwork. So it took a long time. They already had his passport. He had a
Yeah.
Romanian passport,
Wow.
um, and so and they had cut his hair. His hair was really curly in the picture, and it was all cut off when we saw him.
Oh,
But, sitting there too, it was so quiet the whole time. And I didn't think about that till years later, but it was so quiet because the kids stopped crying, because their cries weren't met. And there were about 100 children, 3 and under. So it was so cute. We had to change his clothes because we couldn't take the clothes, and I didn't want to anyway, so we had to change him, and he was so little. He wasn't even 20 pounds, and he was almost 2. He was so tiny. Like I had an 18-month outfit. I remember it was so big for him and his shoes, and so we changed him. And then we had to sit there, and we brought like little Cheerios for him to eat. I remember it was fun, and Sean was playing like an airplane, and he started copying him. That was unreal that he did that. I mean, I was like, wow, he's really smart. So
Yeah.
we were there, and then first time he ever really left the orphanage was in a car. First time he was in a car. And of course, there were no car seats or anything, because Romanian, it was like going back 40 years. I mean, they had just ended communism, and yeah, it was like going back in time. So, we held him close and everything for him, though, it was like, I can't imagine how scared he was because here he's going with strangers. He doesn't understand what we're saying. He's in a
Right.
car, he's outside. And that first night, we actually stayed in an apartment that Morella, who owned the adoption agency, was her parents' apartment during communism. And actually, she got out during communism. Her and her husband, they had escaped, but her parents still had the apartment, so she let the agency, people who traveled for adoption use it. And there was a woman across the hall called Norina, and she would come and she would like make food for us and help with Michael because he didn't understand us, and she would come over and help us to talk to him. And she was right across the
Oh,
hall. Sweetest lady. I mean, older lady,
that's
just the
so
sweetest
sweet.
lady. Yeah, she was really wonderful and so helpful. But like Michael started following me around. It was really sweet. And he was just little and he had like bow legs because he had vitamin D deficiency and his belly was extended because, he didn't get enough to eat. But he was just so little and so cute, but so smart. It was amazing. And it was just like, your heart right away. I mean, my gosh, I would have done anything to protect him and my baby. So that was interesting. But that first night was really difficult. We had a blanket for him and stuff, and they had a crib there. Put him in the crib, and he threw everything out. Like they couldn't have anything in their cribs, you know. And so he didn't want anything. And then he was just, for a kid who never cried, was just so dysregulated, out of sorts. He didn't know what to think. And we didn't know what to do. And I'm trying to calm him. I started to play like music. I tried all these things. I felt horrible because he didn't understand and he didn't know what was happening.
He was
That was a
terrified.
really hard night. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Had you had
but we,
any training or anything
no,
of what to expect or how to navigate the transition? Anything at all?
no, no training. The only
Wow.
thing the social worker talked to us about and the agency talked to us about is and they really didn't have a lot of information about kids adopted from institutions, like the trauma and all of that. Nothing.
Right.
So we knew nothing. But they did say, like, you can hold him like a baby again because he was never held. You can try to do that, hold him close, give him a bottle again. So I did all those things. I brought bottles. We helped try to hold him. At first, he was like not sure. It was really hard because and he would rock all the time. He sucked his thumb and he would rock back and forth, sucking his thumb, and that was his self-soothing. I remember we gave him a bath, and then next day, I think it's the first time he was ever in a bathtub because they
Wow.
never did baths. I mean, they just couldn't. They had 100 kids. I mean, they cleaned him and wiped him off, but never sat in a bathtub. But he loved it. It was amazing. And we
I
didn't have any
bet.
bath toys, but we had like the film containers. Remember when we used to, before digital camera, and he was
Yes.
playing with those? And he
Hey,
could
you
do
gotta do what
whatever
you
with
gotta
it.
do.
Yeah. And 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 we started because he was so skinny and so little, like trying to feed him, make him eat, eat, and bananas and juice, and he had his own little cup, and I think he was like, wow, what is all this? It was amazing, and you could just see him, but you could see the transformation, and then on that Wednesday, we got him on Monday. On Tuesday, we had to go to the hospital to get all the blood work done. Um, to make sure he was okay so he could get a visa to come to the United States because he was a Romanian citizen. We went and going to the hospital, it was unreal. I mean, this was in 1999, and there were people walking around smoking with their IV cart, pulling it along, smoking. Hospital rooms were crowded. It was like going back like 30 years in America. And there was the stairway had an open railing. I mean, he could have fallen off. I was like on the other side thinking it was just so unsafe. just it was unbelievable. And yeah, I just couldn't believe it for a hospital. It was like going back in time, many, many years. And so we saw the doctor there and she did blood work. She checked him out. I'd undress him. He's sitting there. I remember he took the stethoscope and held it. I have a picture. He was just so inquisitive about everything. Like everything was new, right? Everything was exciting. So it was really, yeah. And so we did all that blood work. And then we had to wait and we got it back, I guess, the next day. And so Thursday, so Wednesday, we just did some things. Like I remember we went to Pizza Hut and took him to McDonald's in Romania, getting him a
That's so
little
fun.
Americanized there. Yeah. And he was, but we had to watch how he ate because he was so used to not having much food. We had to be really careful,
Yeah.
like, giving him only a little bit at a time. And so, because he had to feed himself, because they couldn't feed him. So he would hold the spoon like this and he would just be like, so we had to like just give him a little bit at a time. It was just amazing, because he had to adapt because they just couldn't take care of them. So then Thursday we had to go to the embassy. We went to the embassy and there were all these people there with babies or young children, right? Adopting, all there to get the visas, to bring in the blood work saying they're clear and to get their
Wow.
visa and their passport so we could travel back. So we spent a week there. So Thursday it was a long wait at the embassy, but we met a lot of really interesting people. A lot of people there adopting, doing the same thing. And in retrospect, I wish I would have gotten their information. It would have been great to keep in
Right.
touch and see how they're doing. But we were so overwhelmed, we didn't know what to do. So we did that, and then Friday we left Romania, and that was a long trip home. Somebody said to give him Dimettab for his ears because the ear popping. Well, it did the opposite for him. It made him more hyper, and that happens to some kids. And so I spent most of the time in the bathroom playing in the sink with the water, and we switched flights. And we had to change planes, I think, in somewhere, I think in Switzerland, I can't remember. And so we had a layover, and they had like Lego place there. And I remember we said, oh, we took Michael to play Legos, and he started throwing them everywhere. And it's like, okay, I guess we're not going to do this. It was like he was throwing
Oh
them out of the
no.
Lego spot, and it's like, okay, so I just didn't know what to do with the poor kid. You know what I mean? It was like
Right.
he didn't understand us, so I couldn't even say calm him because he had no idea what I was saying. He just like was like, "What the heck's happening to me?" I'm sure he thought, "What is going on in my world now? This is not normal." So, uh,
Right.
yeah, so that was an experience, that trip. And then after that, we got home and everybody was at the airport. My mom, my dad had passed away, my sister, her kids, friends of our family, my mother-in-law and father-in-law. And I mean, there were all these people there and they were waiting. And as we walked out and and my mom was like, oh, just had her hands all, oh, so excited. And he's just looking at her like, well,
What
I,
is
I don't know
happening?
what's going on. I don't even know who I came home with, and I don't know you either. And it was like, it was really,
Yeah.
yeah. But it was nice to see everybody there and so excited, and but it was, I think, really overwhelming for him. And then we went home and people came over, and then I remember the next day, I'm like, I have to go buy him shoes because we didn't have like the shoes that I got were too big. You know what I mean? It's like this poor kid's wearing, because we couldn't do it in Romania. And it's just all these things that all of a sudden, okay, we need this and this.
Yeah.
So I went to get him fitted for shoes. And I remember, he's just, I mean, I can't imagine what was going through his mind. Like what is going on, all this stuff. But he was a real little trooper. And so it was amazing. Once we got home and my dog and my two dogs, the first thing my one dog did to me was I was sitting on the floor and we introduced him and he was really great with him.
So how did that work then? You have him back home. How did you
Mhm.
figure out and navigate through this language barrier?
It
Did you
was really
just
hard.
eventually like he just picked
Well,
up
he
on
was in,
things? Did you work with a specialist? Like how did that
yeah,
happen?
well, we had some words in Romanian that they gave us, and I had this book that I got. It didn't really help much because I couldn't understand, but um, we did have some words, basic words, and then he was like in full immersion. The poor kid. Because we didn't have anybody we knew that spoke Romanian or anybody near us. So certain words we would use. Um, and I mean, pretty quickly. Like he yeah, I mean, thinking back, he was pretty calm about it all, actually. Um, And we started to try to like hold him like a baby sometimes to give him that he never had. I remember just holding him, and we gave him a bottle once in a while to give him that feeling of, being given a bottle. And we would read to him all the time, and he adjusted pretty quickly. I was so obsessed. Maybe it's because I'm Italian, but so obsessed with the food. Like, oh, we got to get him healthy. We got to get him to eat. I would sit and feed him. Like every morning, I'd feed him oatmeal just because that with bananas because oh, that's something really, and I was teaching at the time. This was in September, but I was able to take off, 6 weeks. It wasn't enough, but I needed to work still,
Yeah.
sadly. But then my mom came and stayed with him. So she was about in Milwaukee. I was in Illinois. She was about an hour away, and she'd come for the week and stay and take care of him, which was really great. And
Yeah.
she
He
had
needed
him,
that
you
familiarity
know,
of someone. Probably a daycare would have been so overwhelming to him at that
yeah.
point.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't imagine bringing him there. And then I had winter break and things. But she was with him. And I remember like and he started to say words. I remember like in December, so we got him in September, we had to go get his green card, because that's before that law was passed. If you adopt a foreign orphan, that they're automatically a citizen. That wasn't passed yet. We were
Right.
grandfathered in, but he was still, so we had to apply for citizenship. So we had to go get a green card. And I remember taking him downtown Chicago because we had to go to the immigration office. I remember like there was the Christmas decorations and there was a star and he said, Tar, Tar. He couldn't say us. And
Oh,
he was starting to say things and it was amazing. I mean, that was like 3 months, he was already starting
yeah.
to say some words and we got his little green card picture. I still have all that, Um,
Oh,
he has his little and stuff, but then we had to apply. Later on, we applied for citizenship. Um, but yeah, he started to say things. And with my mom, like she got him to start to learn his colors. I mean, he was only 2 then, and even by like within 2 weeks, he had changed. Like his appearance was so different. Like he had so much more color in his face. He started to fill out a little bit. It was just amazing to see. And I look at pictures now and I think, oh my gosh, the change just within a few
right. Yeah.
weeks. And just his health, was amazing. And he would start to copy us, like really mimic what we would do, follow us and do things. It was really sweet. And yeah, he was very smart. And on his records, it said that he was only 2.5 pounds at birth. And we weren't sure if that was true, but it
Whoa.
was true because we met his birth family then, many years later, and his
Yeah.
birth mother confirmed it. So it's amazing that he didn't have cognitive issues or other issues with such a low birth
Right.
weight. It's really amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, he had sensory integration issues. And I started to see that, but I really, like when he started school, that's when it really, really got so prevalent. That's when we went to occupational therapy and things. But he was afraid of loud noises, like balloons, things like that.
Yeah.
He was, yeah,
But I
but
think those are
and he
things that
couldn't
are
coordinate.
so common even. Like, that's not even
Yeah,
extreme. That's so
yeah,
common for adopted children across the board, whether they were institutionalized or not. So for him to
yeah.
not carry a lot of that is truly remarkable.
Right. And he had mild strabismus, like, and he couldn't coordinate his body. Like potty training was really hard because he couldn't
Mm,
get that, like at night, he couldn't get the message from his brain to that he had to go. And so that took a long time because of the sensory stuff. And he had
yeah,
mild strabismus, like his eye vision stuff. But we worked on all that. Like he couldn't, like when he was 5, he couldn't like coordinate to do a jumping jack. He just couldn't coordinate his body. Well, after we went to occupational therapy by third grade, he surpassed like within months. So it was amazing how, he did that. But it's good we got early intervention,
yeah,
because and we recognize that. But yeah, but it was amazing how far he came in such a short time. But we didn't know about all the other stuff going on, and I wish I had an education then, like the attachment.
yeah,
And he had reactive attachment disorder. There were signs all the way that I didn't know because I didn't know what it was, and
right.
it just got worse. And then when he was a teen, it really got bad. But he
How did that play out as because he was the oldest. And I think so often we see the adopted child, especially international adoption, we see them as one of the younger ones, right? But how
Hmm.
did that play out when you brought home your biological children and you're now adding to the family? Did he have a hard time adjusting to that?
Well, we also moved. So my husband got a new job in Maryland. So we moved from Illinois away from all our family when he was 3. So about a year and a half after we got him. And then I got pregnant and I wasn't trying. So it happened. And so after 2 years of having him, we had our first, we had another son. And so, um, yeah, I remember when I was pregnant, and we had to live in an apartment for 6 months waiting for our house to be
Mm,
ready in Maryland, and we didn't have family. And um, so Michael, I remember him asking me when I was pregnant, so was I in your belly, mommy, like that? No, I can't even tell you. And you're emotional anyway. And I was like, oh, I just was crying, thinking. And I said, no, Michael, you weren't in my belly. I said, you grew in my heart, but you weren't in my belly because you were adopted. But he didn't understand what that meant. Oh my
right.
gosh. And it was just, but my heart's breaking thinking, I wish that, of course I wish I could just fix everything. And so he would ask me questions all the time like that. And it was a transition moving because we were away. And but then my mom came and stayed a month when I had Connor. So that was good because
Mm.
he and my mom were very close. Um,
Yeah, that's
I remember
helpful.
him coming to the hospital. I remember he jumped, came right up on my bed, and they just brought me food, and he ate it all. I had my dinner. I always tease him about that. I'm like, Mike, you ate my whole dinner. But it was so cute because he was only 3 years old. I mean, three and a half, I think, almost 4. Um, so he was very sweet because this was in July. So we had almost, yeah, it was almost 2 years since he'd been here, but not quite. So he, but his baby brother. He held him and gave him a kiss, and we said, "This is your brother," and everything. And he was actually fine with it. Um,
Good.
and yeah, he really adjusted fine. And like they had a good relationship when they were young. Like they had their own rooms, but they slept together. Well, because
Mm.
Michael mainly he was scared. And he
Right,
would sleep
Michael
with
was like,
Connor.
"I don't know how to sleep alone after."
Yeah, I mean, he used to sleep with us too all the time, and he'd tell me. We watched Stuart Little was the movie. I can't even tell you how many times I watched that movie, and that was his movie. You know how they get hooked on. He would say, "Daddy, this is your leg, you rub it," and "Mommy, this is your leg, you rub it." And he'd be in the middle of our bed, and he was just so. I mean, he was just so sweet, but he had all of our attention. Being the first, and I
Yeah,
think he needed that, and that's
yeah,
lucky that we had that. Because he got all of it for a couple years, and that helped. And just he was just a sweet little boy, just the cutest little thing. But he and smart.
yeah, and it sounds like he's done so well for himself in adulthood,
Yeah,
and he's really
yeah,
become
he's doing well.
overcome
Lots
a
of
lot.
struggles to get there.
Yes,
Yeah,
and yeah,
lots of struggles. But
I'm sure.
and he still struggles. He does. I know he still has like attachment things and a deep sense of abandonment. I mean, I don't know if that'll ever go away.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
an insecurity, no matter how well he does or what he does, he still has a deep sense, and we talk about that and stuff. But yeah, but yeah, he's a special. I always tell him though, because then I had 2 boys. I always tell him you were supposed to be my girl, and we laugh about it. And I said so, and then look at what happened. I got these 2 crazies, so we laugh, and he laughs about it. So,
that's
but yeah,
amazing.
yeah. He's doing well, and it's good. But you always see, and we did have a lot of struggles, especially the teen years. Those were horrible years. Um, and now I understand why. But that's when I got educated. We were in crisis, and that's when I got educated. And that's when a lot came out too. Like Karen Purvis started, everything was TBRI, and she actually did a story at TCU about Michael's orphanage, and they were there and visited it when he was still there, because the article came out in December of '99, so they had been there before, right at that same time. So they have pictures of it and everything, and how the situation was for those kids. So, and it was a pretty big orphanage in Romania because over 100 kids 3 and under. And then at 3, they would be moved somewhere else. Yeah. So cribs
Wow.
were just lined up. I just shared that too on my, my Facebook, for adoption. Cribs were just lined up one after another. And they would just pass
Yeah.
out the bottles and then collect them, never held. They just go around, and,
I mean, I
um,
guess you can't. Like, there's no way you're going to have
yeah,
enough staff to do.
no.
That is absolutely insane. And I think having that picture, we watch movies or maybe
Hmm.
like you did, the 2020 special, or
Yeah,
and we know, like, we have some concept that this happens and exists, but to hear your story and like walking in there and seeing it firsthand and then the after effects and raising a child with those effects is so tremendous and so heartbreaking. I think now too, I'm curious what your perspective is, because I think there's a huge shift to not allowing international adoptions.
right. They haven't
And
allowed it.
I think there's pros and cons. Like, I can see both sides,
Hmm.
but having you have lived this and walked this, what is your perspective on that? Should they
Yeah,
exist? Should they not exist? Should, like, obviously there's probably a middle ground that, like, it's
yeah.
adoption is gray, right? There's so much gray within any adoption. So I'm curious what your perspective is.
Well, it's sad they closed adoption when they became a part of the European Union, and they did that because they got pressure from the rest of Europe, because the rest of Europe doesn't have an issue with all these abandoned children. So, they stopped. They still had a lot of children in orphanages. There were still like 10,000 children abandoned every year, um, and so they started to try to foster care and all those things. Now you have to be a Romanian citizen to adopt. So, there's not a lot of Romanian citizens. And there's an issue too. There's like if a child's part Roma, descent in Romania, they're very discriminated.
Mm,
So there's a lot of discrimination, and so so that's going on too. So I think, and then there were a lot of stories. You probably heard them about Americans taking these children for trafficking and using their organs, selling their organs, or doing all these things, which weren't true. Um, because the vetting process, if you went through an agency that was good, I mean, we were properly vetted, through an agency and home study, et cetera. But the thing I do see is that people weren't prepared. I wasn't prepared. Nobody was prepared because we had no idea the trauma these kids face that they didn't remember, but their body and brain remembered. Their brain wired differently, and their body remembers it. And a lot of that doesn't come out until that second biggest growth of your brain in teenage years. So that was really difficult. So there needs to be much more education, like mandatory education. Um, and there needs to be, it needs to be set up so people have support after,
yes.
and the transition. We didn't have that. I mean, we had to send in reports for like 2 years, pictures, and fill out a report about how he's doing everything, health report, everything. Um, Apparently, to the Romanian government, wanted that. So I think I wish adoption was still open because there's still so many children, and they're not getting adopted by Romanians, and
Yeah.
there is a
So where,
problem
right,
still.
where are these children going if they're,
Well, yeah,
and I think we can
they're going in group
acknowledge,
homes and things.
right. And I think we can acknowledge that, yes, there are bad apples in adoption, even infant domestic adoption here in the
Yes,
US. There are, or even foster parents in the US, there are people doing it for the wrong reasons. And we can
right.
acknowledge that. But to completely eliminate something and leave these kids in, all of
Yeah,
them now are left, that's a tough one. That's a tough thing. And I'm sure, especially you who have been in the
yeah,
orphanage, you have heard the silence, you have seen it. That's got to be really hard to know that they are, like, there's just no possibility for them to be adopted, and
yeah.
that's where they will remain.
And the other sad story is there's been documentaries done on these children who weren't adopted, and if you ever look it up on Romania, they're living underground, like in the sewers, addicted to glue, addicted to drugs. living underground because after a certain age they run away from the orphanage, right? They're 10, 11
Right.
years old. They run, and then after a certain age they've been institutionalized, they don't know how to function. And there's such an underground problem. Living underground in the sewers, these kids who just never I mean, left the orphanage, didn't know how to, how to live in society, and are living underground, addicted to drugs and all these other problems. And there was, I think BBC did a documentary about it a few years ago, about the underground problem. So, I think about that, and I think, what if we never got Michael? What would have happened to him? And I don't want to even go there because I have gone there,
Right.
and it's so upsetting because what if, and
I know.
I don't know what it would have become of him. Yeah, I mean, we found his birth family. We had their names. We found them when he was a senior in high school, and he needed that. And we all went to Romania, the whole family, and met them. And I'm glad we did because he deserved to know that and his country, to
Yeah.
see his country and everything. I mean, you're taking these kids out of their country, out of their,
Yes.
ethnicity, everything. It's really hard. But I do think if they can have a good family here, it's so much better than having a life without a family in an orphanage and never experiencing that. And it's not a good place. And the attachment and all of those other issues, it's just so sad. So I wish they did open adoption. I wish that it was still available. And I know other countries too have closed, other
Yeah,
foreign
a lot
countries.
recently have.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people, like, there were bad stories. There's always bad stories. There's always people who shouldn't adopt. There's absolutely people who should not adopt. Because if you're not fully prepared, well, we weren't prepared, but we were willing to learn and willing to,
Right.
um, get educated and stuff. But there's people who just aren't. And if that's then they shouldn't, because I don't know if the child's better off, because then they're abandoned here. And there's so many stories of Romanian adoptees, and I've talked to many of them because there's a woman who helps them, that I become close to. She's in Romanian but now lives in Ireland and helps reunify families. She helps them find their family. She helped us and got on a Skype call and translated for us so he could speak to his adoptive family. Um,
Wow.
yeah, she's amazing. But there's been so many adoptees who have been so hurt, and then she'll have me call them because they're in America, and I'll talk to them, and but they've been abandoned by their family here too because they went through that period of rejection and identity and attachment and all of those things, and their family got resentful, and so then they got resentful and they just parted, and
Yeah.
um, and that's so sad. And you've seen it. I mean, it happens American adoption. I mean, right? Because
Oh,
the parents
yeah.
don't understand, and they
Yep.
and they don't understand, and they get mad and angry, and the poor child just needs their love and understand their grief and everything they went through, and
Right.
they don't. And you've seen a lot of that, so that's really sad too. So
It
then they're
is.
abandoned again, and
Yes.
I can't imagine what that does to them.
Right. And adoption is just, it's hard. It's full of loss and
Yeah,
struggle, no matter what adoption looks like. We see the same symptoms of it no matter the origin, right?
right,
And I think
right,
it is tough. Like, yes, we can acknowledge that there are people who should not adopt. There are horrible situations. But what is sad to me is that over those bad situations, which those people should be held accountable for what they
right.
did, we are now shutting down a system and leaving children and abandoning them.
Yeah,
And is that really better?
yeah.
Like,
No,
why couldn't we have found a better vetting system? Why couldn't we have given those families support? Why couldn't we? It just seems like there's a better way than just
right.
leaving
You're
little
right.
kids. And
Yeah.
in a perfect situation, yes, perfect. In a
Hmm.
perfect world, Romanian people would adopt these children, or whatever country we're talking about,
Hmm.
their own countries, their own citizens would adopt these children and they would remain in their own culture. Yes. But we don't live in a perfect world. We don't.
We
And
don't.
we have to look at the overall big picture of it, which
Right.
it's tough. It's tough. There is nothing perfect. I think in adoption, a lot of times we're looking at better, not perfect.
Yeah, because nothing's perfect. Even having biological children, you have this dream, right? My kid's going to be like this. Nothing's perfect. And that's the whole thing.
Right.
If you adopt, you're making that choice. That's your child. That's it. The good, the bad, the ugly, whatever happens, you make that
Right.
commitment and you stick with it. And I see that some of these parents don't stick with it, and that just infuriates me. Like, that's your child.
I
You know,
know.
if I give birth to a child and they have problems, am I going to give it back? Am I going to complain? No.
Right.
It just makes me so mad. Like when I discovered there was a site, like readoption
As
people, that just, I was like, what? I didn't even know it
horrific.
existed. And that was a few years ago. I was just horrified. I'm like, I can't even look at it. I can't. And I'm thinking, Michael was such a gift, with everything we went through, all the hard times. I'll tell you one thing, that child taught me how to really love unconditionally. He taught me how to love unconditionally. He taught me how to be a mom, how to be committed, how to fight. He taught me all of that, and I wouldn't give any of it up, not any of it. And even the
Yeah.
bad, how much I learned from it. And I'm telling you, I would be in a room crying for hours because I didn't know what to do and what was happening with my child, um, and so worried. But all of that just taught me so much, just so much, and made us stronger. And I don't know. And people ask, well, you have biological kids. I'm like, the only difference is the way I got them. There's no difference in love. My gosh, if anything, my kids, my other two complain that Michael's my favorite, that I'm overly protective. And sometimes he is, because he's the most helpful. No. But and just that relationship, because it was so strained for so long. Those teen years, like there were 3 years where it was so strained and so
Yeah.
painful that now, I text my kids every morning, good morning, because if they're not here, and and of course he's living on his own now. And when he says, and I love you, and he said, I love you too, Mom. And every time I see that, it's just like, wow, my heart. I could just cry now because it means so much to me, because there was a time when I didn't think I'd ever hear that from him.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think
it's
that's also a
amazing.
testament to and something that these parents who are giving up and not working through it or are frustrated that it didn't look like how they imagined. One, that's normal, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just normal. It's
Yeah.
a part
Nothing
of
looks like it.
parenting. It's just normal. But also sticking it out and doing the hard work and figuring
Yeah.
out how to navigate it and how to process through that with them and sitting with them in their grief. And
Yeah.
it pays off in the end and it
Yeah.
creates a beautiful, lasting relationship. And I think that is so like even myself with teenagers now, like I have
Yeah.
to remember that it's the pain and the growth, right? Growth is
Right.
painful.
This is going to be
And
the hardest
sometimes it's
time.
more painful than you can even fathom. Like it is
Right.
so incredibly painful, but I just have to keep looking forward to that future. Like it will get better, things will change, and it will be all worth it in
Yeah.
the end.
Exactly. And you're doing everything. You're doing the right things. You're showing up. You're present. Yeah. And because there was a time when I think he hated us. I don't know if he hated it, but he did. He thought he did. He was pushing us away. And it was after, and we went to Romania, met his birth family, but we were there with him the whole time. And so were his brothers. We all went, all five of us.
Yeah.
We were there all the way through. And when he had to say goodbye to them and all those mixed emotions, we just hugged him. I didn't expect anything. Um, and that support. And it was when 4 years later, after he was graduating from college, and he called and he was talking to a friend whose mom was adopted and telling his story about how he went to Romania, met his birth family, and then he called and he said, I didn't realize how much that was that you guys did that. I didn't realize you being there with me and supporting me, how important that was, and how some people wouldn't even do that. And he told me, like, this lady said, my parents would have never done that. I wouldn't have even been brought up wanting to meet my biological family. And he said, I don't think I ever said thank you, Mom and Dad, but thank you. And I'm like, Michael, you don't have to thank us. We did that because we want you to heal and we want you to have all your pieces and know your story, and we do it all over again. Um, And so, but it was hard, and there was a lot of expectations from his birth family, and that's another story. So I was very protective, so
Yeah,
protective that I would read all his
that would be,
messages. That I told him now that I did it, but I wasn't telling him then because I, there was an expectation there, um,
yeah, that's hard.
because he's American, and and we did help them out, and I should have never done that because then the expectation was there, and I just couldn't continue, and I didn't want that to be his responsibility. So that was very hard. But
Yeah,
there's so much intel, and so much entwined in it. But
truly.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that reunification story, that's another story. That's a whole other
That'll be
that
our
could take.
part
And we
two.
were, yeah, that'd be part two because we were on a TV show there and everything, and
Oh, that's
it
right.
was
I
really
forgot about
interesting.
that.
Yeah,
I
so it was
forgot
really
about that.
interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes,
it
we have
was
to do a part two. You have such an
yeah,
interesting story. And
it's been
I've
crazy.
talked to you how many times now, and I learn something new
I know.
every single time.
Yeah,
I
but
just
your
love
story
it.
is amazing too. I mean, what you're doing and your children, and I give you so much credit too for your honesty and what you do. It's I love to be on. I feel like I can really open up to you and be honest because you're so honest. Does that make sense? That I feel
Yeah,
comfortable. There's nothing to hide. But I'd love to get Michael on sometime too. I think that'd
I
be
know. I
great.
would
I
love that.
think, yeah, I'll
I
get
would
him.
really
He'll
love
do
that.
it. I think he
Yes.
said he would, and he's fine with me sharing his story. I've gotten permission, so there's nothing I'm sharing that he doesn't know about. He knows, and I mean, there's some things like really bad things that happened that I wouldn't share
Right.
because it
They're
was so
just,
difficult. I mean, I might share
right.
privately, but I wouldn't share because it
Yes.
was really sad, and I wouldn't. Yeah, it was hard, and I'm sure as you have things, our kids will
Absolutely.
do things to push us away, and so that was difficult, but it's all good. And we've talked about it all. Lots of tears, lots, mostly my tears. Lots, we've talked it out. So it's been good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I
Well, thank
appreciate
you.
you sharing your story so much and just your heart for adoption and seeing a need and not just, I think so many people say, well, someday I'll do this, but you made it happen. And I think that is so incredible and hopefully will inspire others to take that someday wish and actually take action and make it happen. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks, Anna.